back to another episode of Not Again with yours truly, Dany Acosta. And today we have the amazing, the wonderful, the legend, the beautiful and intelligent youth pastor, Hannah. Hannah, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. It's a pleasure to be here.
You sound very excited.
I am very excited. I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited to be here, yes.
Don't worry, everybody's going to leave their comments down below and let you know how it's going. So
cool.
I hope you're ready for that. And today, guys, we have amazing topics. As you guys may or may not know, Pastor Hannah is actually a youth pastor at Garden City Church, but she is also a private Christian school teacher. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So if you guys want to know more about that, make sure you guys stay tuned, and we'll be right back as we're going to be asking and finding out more about what it's like being a private Christian school teacher, being a youth pastor, and also maybe some dirty details about Pastor Hannah's life and the reality behind being a person of faith, but also having to be around a lot of kids at the same time. We'll be right back, guys. You've been a Christian school teacher for how long?
I started last October teaching 4th grade.
4th grade, and how has that been so far?
Well, considering that I started teaching when I was 7 months pregnant, it was pretty challenging, and I started already when the year began. I started in October. So the first year, they always tell you, like, in teaching, the first year, you don't really, like, how do I say it? They tell you just survive the first year. Like, try to survive, get into your rhythms, find your routines. So needless to say, you know, coming in 7 months pregnant, then leaving to have a baby, and then come back being in postpartum, it was an eventful first year, that's for sure.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you teach 4th grade where at?
I teach 4th grade at Community Christian Academy in Lowell.
In Lowell. Oh my gosh. And so are you planning to do 4th grade around this year again?
I am, yeah. I signed on for another year.
So tell us a little bit about your educational background, maybe some of the titles that you hold and so forth.
Okay, yeah. So I went to North Point Bible College there. I got a bachelor's in Bible and theology. We actually double major there. It's a major in Bible and theology, and then also a major focusing in student ministry, so working with youth and with kids.
And what is like one of the dearest memories that you hold from North Point?
Oh gosh, there's so many. So many really good memories, because I still have my friends that I graduated with. Like I still see them. I'm still in contact with them even many years later. But I think that the best memory that I have is meeting my husband.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So how do you guys meet?
We,
Sorry, guys, she is taken.
Yeah.
For those of you wondering.
Yes, I am taken. I've been married for 3 years now.
He did put a ring on it.
Yes, he did. I met my husband, we were friends first. We met January 2018.
You know what? I've never met a couple that were husband and wife first.
Oh,
so
yeah?
I would hope so. Okay.
Well, yeah, usually people, like, they start, like, oh, I met this person and I wanted to date them. That wasn't me and my husband.
In Vegas.
Yeah, right, no.
Yeah.
So we met, we had, like, mutual friend groups. The first time we met, I actually don't remember. We were exchanging books for classes or something. But I was a nervous wreck my first semester. I was 6 hours away from where I lived. I was on my own, so I was really nervous. But we ended up being really good friends, connecting over faith, of course, and talking about the Bible and theology. And it wasn't until, I think, like the summertime that he was the one who had interest. He had interest, and he told me he had interest over a Skype call or something. And I told him, okay, I'm going to pray on this, and I'm going to wait. And I made him wait the whole summer.
Wow, okay.
I made him wait the whole summer to tell him if I liked him back or not. Number one, because I wanted to see if he was actually going to be patient and wait. And also to see God's face as well, because I just got to college. So he did wait, and in August I came back and I was like, yeah, I like you too. And a couple of months later we started dating, and the rest is history.
Oh my goodness, that's so beautiful. Pastor Gilbert, bro!
Yes.
Somebody deserves a dinner out, because, good. Wow, that's really cool. And while you were in college, did you always know that you were going to be a private school teacher, or did you have other plans before you graduated?
I had no idea I was going to be a teacher. My goal when I was at school, I always wanted to be a youth pastor. I wanted to serve in ministry. That was my main goal. But while I was at North Point in my second year, I also got called to missions. And I'm still called to be a missionary now. It's just me being in my youth pastor position is preparation for when I do fulfill that missions calling. So I had no idea that I was going to be a school teacher. But when I was interviewing for it, there really didn't seem like there was much of a difference between being a youth pastor and a teacher. The only difference was curriculum. That was really the only difference.
That's really, really interesting. And I think there's a lot of questions that we're actually going to ask about curriculum, because a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about private school, especially when it's a faith-based private school.
Yes.
As you know, and as you've probably experienced in this last year that you've been through this. So I know that your husband is also a teacher. Is that correct?
Yeah, he is a teacher mentor in the Lowell and Lawrence districts.
And what are some of the most difficult challenges that you faced as a private teacher?
Oh boy. There are some challenges, I will say. There are a lot of benefits to it as well, though. Working with kids is I love working with kids. Some people find it exhausting, of course, but I think the most challenging thing working in a private Christian school setting sometimes could be funding. Sometimes could be resources, because private school institutions they're not funded by the state, they're privately funded. And so because some institutions could be privately funded, sometimes things could kind of be short and you kind of just have to work with what you have. So that, for me, my first year was I think the biggest struggle. Like, I wanted to have more resources to teach my kids, or I wanted to do more things with them, or just try and communicate with the parents. It was difficult at first.
And for clarity, it's really interesting, because a lot of people that do take their kids to public schools, often they don't have to pay because our taxes are paying for that, right?
That's true.
But when they do go to a faith-based school, often the parents have to pay out of pocket. Yes, they are paying for a higher quality education for their children at times, but they're also concerned about curriculum. They're also concerned about the quality. And as you know, there's that common speculation of like, well, technically they're not even licensed. How are they going to even be able to manage a curriculum? What are your thoughts about that?
So there are a lot of misconceptions like that because private school institutions can hire who they see fit as that for that position, whether that person does have a license or not. And a lot of people will try to disqualify teachers just because they don't have a license. But what I would say to that is, if someone is really passionate about being a teacher and helping those students with their curriculum and working with the parents, that they're going to work as hard as they can. They're going to be going to seminars. They're going to be taking classes of their own. They're going to work as hard as they can to educate and help the kids that are in their classroom. And I think that is the big difference. You know, in public school, yes, do they have a license? Did they go to school to have the requirements to be a teacher? Yes, of course. But I think you don't necessarily find a lot of teachers in public school who truly, genuinely care about some of the students. And some of them that do, it's really, really hard to, because they're not backed up by administration, or they themselves don't have the resources. You know, it's being in private school, you know, yes, we have limited resources as well, but just to say, well, you're not licensed, you're not qualified, I think I think that robs people the privilege of being able to be taught by somebody who is self-taught, somebody who is really, really trying at their job and will try to get better as time goes on. Because a lot of people, when they become public school teachers, they get their degree, they get their license, they sit in that position for 15, 20 years, and they don't really move forward. Versus, you know, going to seminars, going to classes. I have a lot of colleagues who they're in the middle of getting their master's degree, or they, you know, my principal, God bless her, she offers seminars for us to go to during the year to help kids who have disabilities, to help kids who are dyslexic, to further our education as teachers. Because if we're educating students all the time, we ourselves have to be learning at the same time as well.
Well, there's that common quote, right? Remain teachable.
Yes.
And how can you teach when you're not teachable? How can you be able to show and raise up youth in a particular kind of setting when you're not willing to be set up for success? How can you set up others for success? Right. And I think, like, even to the point of having low funds, right?
Yeah.
Even in public schools, often teachers have to set up like their own Amazon wish list per se, because they often have to put in their own money to be able to raise up funds or whatever it might be to have utensils for their own kids.
Yeah.
Schools do provide an amount, but they don't provide the whole amount.
That's true.
And even when you do taxes, in your tax deductions, there's not a lot of money breaks that occur when a public school teacher is able to invest for their own kids. Do you often find yourself investing in your youth out of your own pocket?
I do, especially for my classroom in multiple ways. We ourselves have an Amazon wish list as well, but at the same time, it's a wish list. You could only get so much, and you could only work with what you have and make the best of what you have.
I have a wish list too, Pastor Anna.
What's on your wish list, Dany?
My future wife.
Oh my God.
You know? Oh my gosh.
That's at the top of the list. Oh my goodness.
It's number one right now. Well, maybe number two. Number one right now is a house. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a saying in Spanish, el que se casa, casa quiere. He wants to get married, wants a house, right? And so why would I get married if I don't have somewhere to take her?
That's a really good point.
You know?
That's a really, really good. I will say, though, if she really, really loves you, she will love you for who you are and not what you have.
And she'll buy the house. If she really loves me. No, but, well, like, what are some things that parents can do or buy for the youth? Or how can parents contribute? Because I think a lot of times they're like, oh, well, I got my kids, like, a notebook, maybe some crayons, stuff like that. But what are some things that they may not have thought about that could actually contribute a lot to their child's education when they are in a private school?
So a lot of the parents, especially where I work, there is a list that the students are required to bring. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is a really, really big list. But I realized that list was so big because it wasn't just for the students. It was also for the supplies for the teachers to have as well. On the supply list is paper towels, dry erase markers, tissues, like just your basic stuff, because sometimes the school is not able to provide that. And I think one of the biggest things that would help a kid in their education is hand sanitizer, tissues, and face masks, because how many kids are out during the year because of sickness and how much work they miss is so detrimental to their learning, especially when it's like test taking time, or, you know, if there's a break, or if it's, you know, we have a STEAM fair that is going on at our school. We do it every year, where it focuses on like the sciences and the arts, and, you know, when kids get out sick or they're not able to keep up with their work. So
can you tell us what is STEAM?
STEAM, it stands for, oh my gosh, I'm going to butcher this.
Is
Please
it
forgive
STEM
me.
Or STEAM?
STEAM, it's STEAM. It comes from STEM, but the A stands for arts.
Okay.
So it adds everything that STEM is there for, but then it adds arts into it.
Because I know that there's a nonprofit here in Lynn. It's called Building Bridges Through Music, and they have STREAM, which is the R is for reading.
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting. And well, to the point of people getting sick, do you feel, and how do you feel that the pandemic affected the youth, having been out of school or even remote for the last 2 years?
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's a really, really big question, because the pandemic really, really affected our kids in the school, just by seeing how their attention span, even their motivation to work, their interactions in class, everything is just, because we live in a digitalized world. It's really, really sad to say, but sometimes kids don't know how to be kids anymore, because even a delayed gratification. I'm teaching kids what delayed gratification is, because they're so used to having a computer in front of them, or not having to complete the work, or having games to play at home versus using their imagination to play with dolls or Hot Wheels, or something that requires more intellectual connection. I hate to say it like that, but I think the pandemic has really, I feel like the pandemic, as it put a pause in our society on how we function, it did that for some of our kids as well. It put a pause on how they're able to function socially, mentally, even physically sometimes. It put a pause on their educational and mental growth. And we're seeing the effects of that when it comes to taking tests and doing homework, and really just being able to have creative thinking. And trying to build on those skills even when there's a gap, especially during their age. Like, let's say the pandemic happened when a kid was 5 years old. Yeah. Well, now 2-3 years later, they have to go into second grade or third grade and now do times tables and have all of these skills, when that time where they were supposed to be building in their emotional and mental intelligence and creative thinking, that's all missing because they were at home. That's all missing because it was in front of a screen. That, interaction that you're able to have, and the things that you learn only through being in person, they missed out on. And those years of their lives are so, so important, because their development is crucial at that age. And so it's kind of like teachers, I think, are trying to play catch up. And, I feel like even in my classroom personally, most of the time during the year, yes, I teach curriculum, but that's the easy part. The hard part is teaching these kids how to interact with each other. The hard part is teaching them manners. The hard part is teaching them how to be nice and how to turn in their homework and the basic life skills. That's what I'm teaching most of the year.
You know what? I think that's a perfect transition into my next question for you, because a lot of parents think that the job of the teacher is to be a parent also. And it's like, my job as a teacher is not to discipline your kids.
Yeah.
My job as a teacher is not to raise your kids.
Right.
And often, even me as a mentor, often I get the phone call, hey, Dany, my child's acting up, fix it. It's like, dude, I'm not the parent.
Yeah.
I'm not the father. I don't go home with these kids. By the way, they're not really acting up all that crazy in my setting. But when they get home, even if I give them the tools and they're not using them or being reinforced at school, at home, it doesn't really work. So other than a cat of nine tails, what does discipline look like at a private school?
Oh boy. So I will say that my school is great when it comes to discipline. I have administration that backs me up if I send someone to the principal's office, if I write someone up, if I give someone detention, which I don't like to do. I don't like to, have to discipline a kid, but I will do what's necessary to keep my classroom in order. So what discipline looks like, I was actually kind of surprised when I first started teaching, because they were really, really strict when it came to, swearing or missing your homework or things like that. But I understood over time why they were so strict about it, because believe it or not, if you give kids an inch, they will take a mile and they will walk all over you.
Right.
But I think when it comes to disciplining kids, if you don't have that administration backing you, you can't have your classroom in order. So it's a team effort when it comes to discipline.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So if you give me an example. So for example, say maybe there's a child in your class, right? Maybe they're raising their voice, they're being disrespectful, maybe they're throwing things around, probably having a tantrum in a fourth grade class, right? What is your first instinct? Like, what do you do?
So my rule in my classroom is you get a warning. Right? I speak to you and say, hey, that behavior is not acceptable. If you do it again, you're going to receive this consequence, right? And if they do it again, how I structure it is I will take a point off of their recess. And I'll keep doing that. The more times I've talked to them, the more minutes they have taken off the recess. Now, say that a kid does something outlandish, like you were saying, how they are starting to throw stuff, or if they are screaming, or if they get in a fight with somebody, I will tell them to physically leave the classroom and go outside, and I'll have a conversation with them and say, okay, you have two choices here. You have the choice of you can calm down out here, leave your attitude outside, and then come back in and we can finish what we were doing. Or you can go to the principal's office and talk to them and tell them what happened.
See, that's probably why I'm not a teacher, because I would take the good old taser out, put them in their place.
Right.
It'll be shocking, but it'll work. They'll never do it again. I guarantee you that. Well, I know that when I was growing up, I was in a school where youth that were either had special education, had some form of IEP.
Yes.
Or unfortunately, I grew up in an era because I'm like significantly younger than you. I grew up in an era where a lot of the kids actually had to wear yellow shirts. So we had uniforms. It was white and green, but youth that had IEPs, they had to wear yellow and green. They were the in air quotes special kids, right?
Wow.
And they were in specific classrooms. Not all of them had the same disability, but they shoved them all into the same classroom.
Yeah.
But it sounds like nowadays everybody's mixed up, right? In different classes, you get to be with like not regular peers, but non-IEP, I would say, peers.
Yes.
But then you also get to be with other peers that might have IEPs.
Yes.
So what is the most common IEP you see being implemented in your setting, particularly in your classroom? And what are things that you're doing to make your class more accessible?
In my class, the most common thing that you would see in IEP is dyslexia. And, these kids that have dyslexia, they're super, super smart. They study really, really hard, and they really try to do well in school, but their disability sometimes keeps them from getting that grade that they want. Now, how I work with them and how I set the goal for them, I say, I want to see progress. I don't care if you get an A, I don't care if you get a B. If you come into my classroom the first quarter and you have a D in spelling, but by the third quarter you have a B, we've accomplished our goal. I want to see progress. I want to see that you're trying. And on my end, I'm trying to do research on how to help them get better in the area that they struggle, whether that's decoding words, whether that's using visual aids, whether it's, I will do what I can to help them achieve that goal of progress and getting better. Because I don't believe that somebody's disability can disable them. I don't think that could, I think it can happen if you let it. I truly think that, people obviously they have struggles, they have these disabilities, but there are ways to work around it. There are ways to maneuver around it. And, you know, that doesn't just apply for someone who's dyslexic. That applies to someone who's blind or someone who has autism.
Oh my gosh, my heart. Well, you know, I often, and to your point, I often tell people, like, it's not my disability that disables me.
Yes.
It's the things that are not made accessible to me that are disabling. Yesterday, I was at a city meeting and we were talking about some of our recreational areas here in Lynn. And one of the things that I was telling them is, it's very unfortunate that for me as a blind person, I can't go to a local park or a local recreational area because it's not accessible to me. Right. And so it's not my blindness that disables me from going. It's the park that's not made accessible that disables me from entering that place, right? And it doesn't just stand true for a park. It stands true for my job. It stands true for a school. It stands true when I was going to Salem State University and so forth.
Yeah.
And even as you guys can see, I'm using a laptop here on the camera and I'm using a screen reader. So as we're having a conversation, I'm listening to my notes and I'm trying to manage all of these things. But if I didn't have my notes, if I didn't have these things made accessible to me, I would be a lot more limited. So it is very challenging, I think, as a teacher, especially when parents think that you have all the answers, right? And when we open up that box of, that Pandora's box, for lack of a better word, they think we have like this magic wand where we strike their kids and it's a done deal, but that's not how it works. And a lot of it, like I said earlier, it's not just us reinforcing what we believe in class, it's also them taking it home and reinforcing it at home. And so I also seen a lot of youth fall behind in reading. What are some of the strategies that you recommend parents when their kids are falling behind in certain areas?
So whenever a child is falling behind in any area, whether that be math or reading or science, I will always reach out to the parent and say, listen, this has to be a team effort. Because I could give your kid every single thing that they need in classroom, but if you're not helping them at home, you're missing half the pie. You're missing half of the workload. So how do you expect them to complete this entire task when they're only getting half of what they need? And to answer your question when it comes to reading, I tell the kids, if you're having trouble in reading, you need to practice. You need to read at home. You need to be reading at least 20 minutes a day. And that is the thing that I struggle with my students a lot, is because they hate reading. A lot of kids, I mean, even when I was growing up too, but I think also because our age has been so digitalized, they could just listen to a book. And that, unfortunately, even our kids with dyslexia, they need to practice reading more. But unfortunately, some of them they like to listen to books better because then they don't have to do that work of decoding and actually looking at the page. But they'll say, oh, well, I'm still reading. Well, no, you're not. You're listening. And you're comprehending what you're hearing. That's totally different from looking at a page and following along on the lines and comprehending what the words are and sounding it out in front of you. And so what I tell parents and what I do in my classroom, because I noticed this really, really early on, that my kids had a lot of trouble reading out loud, sounding out words even, you know, the basic reading comprehension skills. And the system that I set up in my classroom was, I don't know if you had this when you were little, but when I was in 3rd grade, they had an AR system where if you read a book, they had this system where you could go take a quiz on it. And if you passed the quiz, then you got a certain amount of points and then you got a prize.
When I was little, we didn't even have quizzes.
Oh my gosh.
I don't even think we had books.
What? Oh my goodness.
No, I'm kidding.
Where did you go to school? No, I'm kidding.
In Flintstones times, you know?
Yeah.
No, but that's really interesting. And I think it's a collaborative approach, right? I think it has to be not just the teachers reinforcing. I think it's not just trying to spark up the interest in youth, but also the parents being more involved, more present, right? And being more aware of what their kids' needs are, but also being aware of how they can motivate their children. I know for some people that I work with in the field, having a reward system works. Okay, you read this book and you tell me what it's about, I'll get you this, right? Or you finish these 3 books and you write a report for me on it. I'm thinking of this movie, I don't know if you ever watched it, it's called Gifted Hands. It's about Dr. Carter. It was an African American who, I believe he did the first brain, it was like parting basically 2 brains that were attached. It was the first surgery that was successful. And so one of the things that he was talking about was when he was young, the mom would always come in, him and his brother would always be on the TV. The mom used to be a housekeeper, so she would go out and about and would clean all these houses. Well, one day she was like, what is it about this man that I work for that he's so rich? And she's walking around in the home and she notices something. These big bookshelves filled with books and books and books and books. Yeah. So one day she gets home and she's like, Carter, all of you, get off the TV. Turns out, and the kids are like, hey, what are you doing? Turns off the TVs. And you're going to read and you're going to write me a book report every single week about every book that you read. Whew. And the kids are like freaking out, like, what's wrong with you, woman? Oh, you know? But that was the seed that was planted in order for Dr. Carter to be able to be the successful brain surgeon.
Yeah.
But it took discipline. It took sacrifice. It took a mother to say, no more. I'm breaking this generational bondage of my children not being able to be academically where they can be, because nothing's holding them back. But, you were saying earlier about this imagination thing, right?
Yeah.
In tabletop gaming, they call it the theater of the mind. I remember when I was a kid, we had to play outside.
Yeah.
There was no,
Us
Nerf guns. There wasn't like super soaker. I mean, we had to make it up. We had to get sticks and stones.
I was going to say, you had to play with sticks and grass.
Yeah, we had to pretend like everything was a thing, right?
Yeah.
But now, when you watch TV, or it deprives your imagination from being able to do its job, which is partially, right, to imagine.
Yes.
And so we want to come back with a few hot topics. I think we're going to do a quick, what they call a rapid fire kind of segment. Okay. And so, guys, we're going to be talking about a little bit of controversial topics from evolution to LGBT and a lot more. So we'll be right back. Awesome. I hope you're ready to be on fire.
Well, I kind of already am. My cheeks are turning like super red.
I brought a kerosene, jug and my gasoline and a lighter.
Lord.
We're going to set you up.
Make me a human torch? Goodness.
Yes, old school style, Renaissance.
Yikes.
That's what we live for. But anyway, guys, today we're going to have a really, really, a few questions. I think they're really hot topic questions for some of you that are interested. I think a lot of you would kill me if I didn't ask these questions, but I also think they're very important to be able to get a perspective. I think a lot of times we are able to break controversy here. We're able to crush the controversial topic in a way that maybe you think, maybe you've heard, maybe you've been told, maybe you went down the rabbit hole online and saw all the negatives, but I believe Pastor Hannah's here to clear up a lot of that controversy and a lot of that speculation that we may think about, but we don't really actually know until we hear it from the source of where it might be coming from. So with that said, there are a lot of controversial things that a lot of parents are concerned about. And so one of the first ones is it true that private Christian schools shove Christianity down kids' throats?
No.
Tell us a little bit more.
So,
in under 10 seconds.
In under 10 seconds. Okay.
Yes.
Parents sign up their kids to be at a Christian school. And I'm sorry, if you sign up your kid to be at a Christian school, don't be disappointed when we teach Christ to them. I will say that. Now, do I get the opportunity to share the gospel in class? Yes, I do. Because it is a Christian institution, and that is what we are about. And so that mentality of, well, you're shoving Christ down my kid's throat. Well, if you don't want him to hear about Christ, why'd you send him to a Christian school?
Right.
Mind you, does that mean that the kids can't think for themselves? No, that's not true. They can totally think for themselves. I have kids who ask me questions all the time. And just because I am teaching them about Christ and about biblical values, does that mean that they're reflecting them in their life? No.
And to be fair, I go to a public school and they tend to shove evolution and all of these kind of theories down our throats. And it's almost like we have no right to complain, right?
Right.
But when we do speak up, it becomes very, very spicy, very, very quickly.
Very controversial, yes.
Are piercings and tattoos a sin?
Oh, God.
Only
No.
all of America is watching right now, and they're
I know
waiting
all
on
the
your answer.
legalistic churches are going to set me on fire. No, it is not a sin. No.
Right. Is drinking a sin?
Drinking is not a sin. Getting drunk is.
Getting drunk, I agree.
Yes.
That's why I drink every day. I don't drink every day.
He drinks water every day. That's what he drinks.
Yes, I drink that spirit, girl.
Oh my
God. My child practices a different faith, and they're only going to feel judged if I take them to a private Christian school.
No, that's not true.
Tell us about that.
Repeat that one more time.
Yep. So my child, maybe he's Muslim, maybe he's Buddhist, maybe he practices a different form of faith.
Okay.
And if I send him to a private Christian school, he's only going to be judged.
No, that's not true. He will have kids who ask him questions, and we'll ask him, "Oh, well, why do you believe that?" And they'll be really, really curious, especially if they're 4th or 5th grade. Because like I said before, just because the kids go to a Christian school does not mean that they are Christian. Mind you, you have some that are, but a lot of them really aren't. And I think that's what surprises a lot of parents when they do send their kid to a Christian school. Unfortunately, sometimes their kid ends up getting worse because there are still bad influences at Christian schools. Like I said, you will have a percentage of kids who are Christians, but there is a big percentage that isn't. And that's why, as being a teacher at a Christian school, I'm still working in a mission field because there are still kids in my classroom who don't believe in Jesus.
Christian schools are not diverse enough.
That's not true. That is not true. There is literally one white kid in my class. Everybody else is Brazilian, from Kenya, from Africa, from all over the place. So no, that is totally not true.
All Christian schools have rich kids.
Nope, that's not true. So we do have a tuition that you do have to pay for, and some parents can afford that, but then there are some who can't, and their kid needs to apply for a scholarship. There are some who get discounts if they work at the school, stuff like that. So no, that is not true.
LGBTQ kids are not welcomed.
That's not true. No, that is not true. All are welcomed to be at our school and to learn at our school. We don't discriminate based on your gender, based on your belief, based on, your sexual orientation. Now, mind you, don't get upset, once again, if you're hearing Christ preached at a Christian school.
Right.
So, yeah.
Christian private schools lack after-school programs because of funding. I would say that is half true. So we do have after-school programs, but do we have as many as a public school? No. And I would say because we don't have state funding. If we had state funding, we would have every single team that a public school has. But with the resources that we have a basketball team. We even had a basketball clinic. I believe we have a soccer team, or we have after school clubs even. So there are activities. Now, are there as many as a public school? No. Let's see here. Kids feel a lot more stress and anxiety because of the high pressure and expectation.
Ooh, that's a really, really good question. I think that is true depending on who the parent is. I really think that depends on who the parent is, because us as teachers, we don't want to pressure a kid to saying, you have to do this, you have to be this way, you have to do that way. We encourage progress, like I was saying before. We want them to get better than when they started at the beginning of the year. Now, if you have a parent who has that mentality, then there is going to be that kid who feels that pressure. But if there is a parent who doesn't put that amount of pressure on their child, then their child is going to flourish and not feel that pressure.
There's a lot of, let me see here. Which Bible character do you relate to the most?
Oh, gosh. Oh, no. Wow. I don't think there's one. I mean, I don't want to really pick one because a lot of them had like criminal records, and I haven't done anything criminal. But, well, I don't know. Okay, I'll pick one. Hannah.
Okay.
It's
nice.
Not because she has the same name as me. That's not why.
Only because it's spelled the same backwards.
Or that too.
Yes.
I think she's one of my. Well, your question was not one of my favorite one. The one I relate to the most, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yes. No. Now I remember. It's Hannah and also Peter. Hannah because of how she prayed and she sought the face of God, but also Peter because Peter had a big temper and he always thought he didn't think before he spoke. And I've had a lot of moments where I'm just like really rash and I have my temper issues, and then God's like, you need to calm down. So yeah.
We're going to move on to our next segment. And guys, I really, really hope that you guys have more questions for Pastor Hannah. Leave them down in the comments down below. We'll be right back as she's going to be talking about being a youth pastor. It's all good. So, guys, I'm really, really excited. I think it's going to be really good. So we're going to have a really quick segment here. I think it's going to be really, really fun. And so, Pastor Hannah, tell us a little bit about how do you get called to being a youth pastor at your church?
Oh, boy. How did I get called or how did I get asked?
Well, typically, right, a lot of people say I was called by God to become a pastor or youth pastor. Like, it's a calling, right? Mm-hmm. So what was that calling like for you? Not necessarily the call from the pastor, but more so the calling from the Lord.
I see. Okay, so I did not have a break in the clouds, sky opens, it's written on,
the trumpets were sounding.
Yeah, the trumpets sounding, this is your purpose in life, you're going to do this. I did not have that. I didn't have that type of a moment when I got called into pastoral ministry. It was
picture like this golden staircase appearing and like
right, and the
Jesus
words are spelled
comes
out in the
down.
clouds. Yeah, something super dramatic. No, that was not how it happened for me. Mine was more progressive. Mine actually started when I was 16 years old, after I got baptized in the Holy Spirit with evidence of speaking in tongues. That's when it really started for me. After that happened, God had just given me such a boldness to go and witness to the kids at my high school. I would see kids in the morning because I would always get there super early to pray with one of my teachers who was a Christian at the time. And she still is to this day. Shout out to Mrs. Gettridge. I would get there early to pray before school, and I would see kids sitting by themselves, and a lot of those kids who were sitting by themselves, I didn't know who they were, but I would go in and I would sit down and I would talk to them. And a lot of these kids, some of them didn't even want to talk to me, but what I found was a lot of these kids were depressed, or they were anxious, and they were cutting, and there was self-harm, and some of them were on drugs, and they came from bad home lives, and just hearing and seeing their hurt really, really kind of just broke my heart for my own generation, but yet the generation of youth. And so I would say that was the start of my calling to youth ministry.
How long have you been a youth pastor?
I have been a youth pastor since July 2022, so about a year, but I've been working in youth ministry since I was 18, so about 6 years.
And what is the name of the youth ministry that you're part of?
City Youth.
City Youth, nice. And guys, we'll be putting all of that description down below in the video description. I think it's going to be really interesting. I'm actually a leader of the youth right now as well, and we're able to collaborate together and working with a lot of the youth. But it's really, really fun because a lot of the youth that we do work with, they're very diverse. They're very crazy sometimes.
Yes.
They're really, really fun. And I think we have a lot of activities going on. We have actually a back to school bash, right, coming up in September. So I think that's going to be really fun. Yes. We'll also put that information down below. And I think there's a lot of similarities, but also a lot of differences between being a youth pastor and also a private school Christian teacher.
Yes.
But in the midst of all of that, what is one of the funniest things you ever witnessed?
In youth ministry or in...
Either one.
In the classroom. Okay. Oh boy. So there's two. I'll do the youth ministry one. Mind you, we've had a lot of funny instances, and what I find funny, some people will not, but for me, it was like one of those like barreling over, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. We were playing a game called Spud, and it's where somebody's and you have to hit them with a ball or something like that. And there was this one kid, he really just wasn't feeling it, and he didn't really want to be a part of the game, but he like was kind of dropping an attitude a little bit. And one of my other youth leaders, he's really tall, he is not really intimidating, he's kind of soft-spoken, but it's like, don't mess with him kind of thing. And he was kind of targeting one of my leaders during the game. And so one of my leaders, it's finally his turn to get it, and the first person that he targets to throw the ball at is this other kid.
Oh my gosh.
And I was telling him, I was like, you need to be nice. And he was like, I'm going to be nice. I'll be nice. He throws it straight at the kid, and it hits the kid in his abdomen, and all you hear is,
oh my gosh.
Everybody started laughing so hard because it was just the sound effect that the poor kid made. And he tried not to act like it hurt, but you could tell he was in pain. And I yelled at my leader. I was like, why'd you do that? And he was like, he needed it. And I was like, what do you mean he needed it? So that was one of the like, oh gosh, you just had to be there for it. But then one of the ones in classroom, I'm very, very squeamish. Like, if I see blood, I will pass out. Like, done deal, don't call me if somebody's dying, because I'll die right next to them. One of my kids, I always told them, because 4th grade, you're losing teeth. I tell them all the time, Mrs. Carreras is very squeamish. If you're going to lose a tooth, if you have a bloody nose, if you have anything like that, tell me and go straight to the nurse. Do not show me, because you know how kids are like, oh, look at this, like, lint between my toes. Like, they want to show you everything.
Right.
So there was this one time I was teaching, and one of my kids raised his hand, and I said, yes, what's up? And he goes, Mrs. Carreras, and I say, what? And he goes, spits his tooth into his hand and goes, I lost my tooth. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. I was like, get out of my classroom, go to the nurse. And everybody starts dying laughing because they're like, are you going to throw up? Are you going to pass out? And it's like, if you don't show me, I'll be okay. And he thought it was the funniest thing. Mind you, this kid did not have to do that. He could have just been like, covered his mouth, Mrs. Carreras, I'm going to lose my tooth. No, he spat it out in his hand and like had to show me. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Pastor Hannah. And for those of the people that are watching, do you have any contact info where they can reach you at? Maybe like an email, a phone number, or anything like that? If people have any questions about youth ministry, I know that you're a youth pastor here in Beverly, Massachusetts, but also for those that are pondering putting their kids in a private Christian school in Lowell.
Yeah, so my email address is capital HANNAH at gardencitychurch.net.
Awesome. So we'll put that in the description down below. And if you guys want to get a hold of her, make sure you guys email Pastor Hannah. Again, Hannah at gardencitychurch.net. And we'll be right back with some final words. Awesome. So, Pastor Hannah, do you have anybody that inspires you, and what are your words to them?
So I have two people who inspire me. Number one is my head pastor at my church, Pastor Aaron Rios. He has been such a spiritual father to me the past couple of years. He tells me how it is when I need to hear it, whether it's hard or whether it's soft. But he's also been such a support system for me and my family. So I just want to say thank you. And I'm super, super grateful for how he and his wife have poured into my life. As a minister, as a student, and even as a teacher as well. And the other person who inspires me is my Nana. She recently passed away in January. And so she came over to the States from Ireland when she was 19 years old for the first time. And she really inspired me because she taught me the value of hard work as a young kid. She taught me, work as hard as you can with what you can, and love your family with everything that you have. So, and I would say thank you to her, even if she's not here. I know she's with Jesus and she's not suffering with the sickness that she had. So I'm just grateful, and I love her so much, and I miss her.
Well, I'm sure she would be very proud to see you, and I'm sure she still is. I'm sure she's very proud to see her beautiful young granddaughter being able to be here, not just talking about the Lord, but also raising a child now, right, in Christ, and being able to see her granddaughter teaching and ministering and being able to pastor a lot of youth in ministry. I think she would be very, very proud of you. So on behalf of her, maybe I'm nobody to be able to say this, but I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud of you for everything that you're doing, that you've done. And we hope nothing but the best for your marriage, for your motherhood. They say there's no hood like motherhood.
That's true.
And dude, thank you very much for being with us. Guys, thank you so much. Dude, you know what? It was my privilege. Honestly, I'm very, very honored to have our youth pastor here with us. And I hope that we can have you again, maybe in the near future. Yeah. Maybe Pastor Gilbert would come along.
I was going to say, maybe next time we'll get my husband right next to me. That way you can have the face to the person.
Absolutely. Pastor Hannah, thank you very much. And for those of you guys that are watching, remember that this is not again with me, Dany Acosta. And remember to walk by faith and not by sight. God bless you guys. We'll see you guys next time. Peace out.